Hello, everyone. It is indeed time to head north. I'm Natasha Ryan, and with me, I have our CEO, Steve Hernandez of the North Group. Hello, Steve.
Hi, everyone. How are you?
So, kind of a sad episode for me, and I'm going to try not to tear up, Steve. You know, I get emotional. This is actually my last podcast with the North Group because I have decided to devote my time to a nonprofit that serves our community. And so Steve and I wanted to hop on and just talk about my journey with the North Group and how grateful I am for my time here and next steps. So, Steve, thanks for indulging me for being the last guest that I'll host here.
Yeah, it's a somber and sad day. Somber and sad day. Steve's not trying to pay any attention to it right now.
Steve, you're excellent at compartmentalizing. I
I
told
am I I am good at compartmentalizing.
I told Kathy that yesterday. Good friend, colleague. I said, nope, no tears till Friday. Saving the tears till Friday. So I'm going to try to honor that commitment. So just so you all know, obviously, if you listen to the podcast, you know that my journey started out in the news business. So I was a news anchor for 16 years, and I still appear on TV on NBC here in Seattle from time to time. And I randomly got recruited into private security almost 4 years ago. And a year in, I met Steve at GSX and we hit it off, and we had to come to some sort of workable solution to work for the North Group, and we achieved that. So thank you for the opportunity that you afforded me and pulling me into the TNG family, forever family. I appreciate the opportunity, of course.
Yeah, I mean, you're doing what we all should do, which is chase our purpose, right? And our passion and align those two things. And if you're not chasing your purpose and your passion, what are you chasing?
And
So,
you always drive that home. What's your why? What's your why?
yeah.
So my time here with the North Group, I have worked with some of the most wonderful humans and have interviewed some of the most wonderful humans who have struggled with that transition of going from military into civilian life. And I've heard about their mental health struggles through their service and the things that they saw and experienced, and then having to cope with that when they come back home. And I've fallen in love with the community. I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Air Force, a lifer, and I moved from base to base, 9 different schools. So I know this community inside and out from a personal touch point, and then also from my work here at the North Group. And when I met the organization I'm going to, this is the group they serve. And it just all kind of hit home for me. It culminated that everyone in my world kind of is involved in this organization. People from my news days, my MC days, my security days, everyone is all those people from different communities have a hand in where I'm going. And so I'm very honored that I got to interact with people. And Steve, this is a cause near and dear to your heart, right? We have 18 to 22 veterans commit suicide every day. It's reported that 50% of people who have served suffer from PTSD. And we at the North Group constantly are saying, what can we do? What's our part in helping combat the things we care about, right? And if you want to lend any perspective on the lack of resources or help that are out there for our active duty military, our first responders, our veterans.
Yeah, I mean, I've sat on a board for 8, 9 years following the Wounded Soldiers Fund here in the state of Michigan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Been involved in a lot of you know, different veteran journeys, whether it's folks coming out of military service into the security industry or trying to go into entrepreneurship, right? This struggle is often done in the dark. Um, it's one thing I've said with a lot of our, VSOs, our veteran service organizations that I've worked with over the years, right? I don't really care about the guy that wants help. I care about the guy that is afraid to ask for help. Um, right? And because no one's focused on that individual, right? No one's focused on the guy that just says, "Yeah, I'm good." And I think all of us have lived that hyper um, tension environment where no matter how perfect our world is, that the chaos in our own head can sometimes take over. There's those of us that will live with gunfire going off in our head the rest of our life. Even at a birthday party, even at a Christmas morning, right? There's smells and feelings and things that those those of us that just don't show it um, had a lot of those folks, right? That fight it silently. So being able to get out there and get people to talk about their problems, get people to communicate, because I think those that have been through some of the most traumatic events are probably the least to talk about it. I also got, close friends that they don't ever tell war stories, they tell funny stories, but when they get alone, you know that they struggle with their own mind. Um, a lot of us have, in the service of others, foregone our family, our kids. Um, I think there's something really sad but honorable about that, right? Is that people have sacrificed so much for others that don't even know their name, but where there's people that punch out early, leave early, and take as much as they can. But there's a silent few out there that continue to serve quietly, have served quietly, and I think that struggle is even more quiet than their service. And if you can breach that gap and you can reach those people and get them to open up, I think you could definitely save some more lives.
When you touched on communication skills. I mean, how hard is it when you come from the military where it's very, structured, stringent, everyone, no tears, right? Like, how do you then transition in coming back home from where you were stationed, or, a TDY, whatever, you come back home and then you're immersed back into family life and you have to communicate in a whole different way with your family. I mean, how hard can that transition be?
Everybody talks about transition and all these terminologies, but honestly, you just wake up every day and figure it out. That's what most of us are doing, right? Um, for me, it was faith, right? There had to be something bigger than myself, because if I lost the thing I believed in, which was the military, right, the army, and I can't believe in myself because that's just arrogant, right? What do I believe in? Right. And we see a lot of that in our industry, right? We see a lot of the arrogance. I just call it what it is, right? And the but humility is everything in your transition, right? It's knowing that I've got a problem I need to work on. The one thing I can say early on in my transition is I had good mentorship that would call me out, right? And say, hey, you need to do this better. Hey, you need to fix that. There is no John Ramboing it yourself, right? There's no figuring it out, working it out. And listen, at the end of the day, you got people that go to work, right? I mean, a lot of law enforcement officers, firefighters, first responders that have, you know, the experiences, the traumatic experiences within the military side of the house. We smile, we laugh, we go to the communities that we're in, and we take part. But when we get alone, that battle rages on in our head, right? Fear, doubt, anger, frustration, whatever.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with owning it. Communicating it is the greatest, I think, journey that people go down, because communicating is self-ownership, right? But that's where
Yeah.
that humility comes in. If you just make the arrangement with yourself that you're going to have that core list of folks in your life, um, I mean, I say this without, you have to do it without being weird, right? You can't just walk up to a random stranger and say, I'm really angry and I think you should help me, right?
Yeah.
You know, but I mean, a lot of my journey was attributed to, my wife, my kids, right? There were effects along the way, right? And then, I mean, a dear friend of mine, Dave Harvey, another friend of mine, Dan Voss, right? A lot of the employees and people in my life along the way, mentors, right? There were people that just gave wisdom, but I was receptive to being a student, right? And I've always been receptive to being a student. I've always wanted to learn more. I want to be better every day. Like, my hero in me is me in 5 years, right? Who can I be in 5 years? What can I be in 5 years? Can I be better than I am today? Right? Stagnation is the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but fear is the driving force, right? A lot of guys don't want to talk about that, right? I'm not scared of anything, like I'm not scared of anything living more than I am myself, right? I'm more scared of myself than I am any other living man, right?
Explain
And
that.
well, I think that, it goes back to what I always say when we talk to clients, right? The boogeyman's real. Um, and when you're capable of being the boogeyman in your own head, you know, my fear is, am I the best person I am? Am I a good person? Am I being a good person? Am I taking care of people? Like, I could care less about, right, the success, the grind. Am I taking care of the people I've committed to take care of? And listen, a lot of guys fail that battle, especially when it comes to veterans with traumatic stress and I hate the term PTSD. You know that about me. Like
I
I
know.
I don't even like to use it, right? Because I
Yeah.
think it's way more complicated than just, oh, hey, he's got PTSD, right? There's so many different psychological avenues that we go down, and you got to look at those motivators, right? Well, what's driving that individual, those drivers? What's driving that person to feel that way? Um, because we're just human, right? So unpacking the fear in your own mind is like that first step to that humility phase, right? And then you're going to go through this. I mean, I went through it, this wash, right, where you hit rock bottom, right? You're not a good person. You're not a good person to yourself. I mean, you're not a good person to those that want to love you, because boundaries are a real thing. Like, you got to set boundaries up. What's crazy is when you change who you are and you realize that I don't want to be that person, and I believe people can change, right? I believe people can grow, right? But
Mm-hmm.
that fear is still, there's an animal in there still, right?
Yeah.
And in the words of a dear friend, you don't tame a lion, right? You can't
Yeah.
tame a lion. You know who I'm talking about. You
Yes.
cannot you cannot tame a lion. I think we all got a little bit of a lion in us, and you know whether it's self-induced or not, fighting the battles alone is the greatest travesty that I think my brothers and sisters that I've known and lost have faced. Um, it's hard because, I mean, Can't tell you how many times I'm like, oh, I should call so and so, and then weeks, months later, I get a message that they punched their ticket. And my philosophy is now I have to live my life in honor of those folks, right? They go on my mental wall of, they're not here. What can I do in honor of them? Right. And I think that's what it's about. Everyone who wants to pay tribute, right? We're coming up on 9/11 here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but at the end of the day, um, fighting the battle alone, especially when you can't grasp humility, is the greatest fear state for, I think, us to be in. But listen, I don't care. I don't give a shit who you are. Like, toughest guy in the world, right? Whatever. You were this, you were that, you're afraid of something, right? We're all afraid of something,
We all
you
have
know.
something. Yep.
I'm afraid of myself. I'm afraid of who I can become in that moment where all bets are off, all sanity is out the window, and I have to flip that switch, right? Like, because, and then you know me very well, I don't care, right? Like, I have an I don't care switch along with my on switch. The difference is, and I think us between like the good versus the evil or the bad is we have that I don't care switch that could be flipped on with our on switch, where true sociopath, true psychopath, right? True individual that just doesn't care about human life, right? Doesn't. And this is the thing too. Like, I've had this conversation with a lot of brothers in recent months. We all use this like wolf, sheepdog,
Yeah.
sheep
Yep.
analogy, right? I think a lot of us are wolf in sheepdog clothing. And I think that's part of the problem is like there's those of us, and listen, most folks out there, they're a sheepdog, right? They're a protector. But there's some of us that literally we're the wolf. And it takes a wolf to catch a wolf, right? It takes a wolf to take on a pack of wolves. And I don't want to trade that. I want to make our industry and our community well because we need good wolf, right?
Yeah.
We need good pack of good wolf in our society because at the end of the day, if we just have a bunch of sheep and a bunch of sheepdog running around, it it's fish in a barrel, right? You know. So
Having this.
for me, I think that's the important thing. Is like I don't want to become soft.
Yeah.
I want to become hard and compassionate.
Yeah.
Harder and compassionate. Does that make sense?
It does. And like one of my favorite podcasts, like you have those moments that stick with you when people say something, it resonates and you have an aha moment, right? In having this conversation, I go back to a podcast we did with a professor at West Point. And he said, Natasha, I want you to think about something. He said, our whole lives, and I've had this conversation with you a million times, our whole lives, people are taught you don't hurt women and children. And then we send people overseas to war, and women and children are used as shields. So they're left with no choice because sometimes women and children hold the bombs or whatever else. So they have to make a choice in that moment if they're going to go home to their families one day. And then they come back home knowing they committed what people here would call an atrocity, right? And they have to sit with that and live with that and then go home and love on their wife and kids. And there's just not enough support to like tackle something like that. But that has stayed with me. I think that was one of the first episodes we did 2 years ago, and that just
Yeah.
sits with me that the people that serve our country and give up everything and put their lives in danger for the betterment of society have to wrestle with, am I a good or bad person because I committed this egregious sin by societal norms. And now I have to live with that. And that's a hard, hard pill to swallow.
So that's a very specific analogy, and yes, I could think of a couple of those scenarios that I know of, right? And I'm sure there's way more out there, but it's just the collateral damage, right? But here's the thing: I never really cared about the death and the carnage. I cared about the mistakes that caused it, right? I cared about the families that are left here to wonder how or why me or like that. Like I'm not, I'll be honest with you, like I'm not tearing up at, you know, your buddy getting thrown on a chopper and dying on the medevac. I'm getting teared up at the damn funeral with the 21 gun salute and the flag being folded and handed over to the spouse or the children and on behalf of a grateful nation, right? Like that's where I lose it. And then taps, I'm gone. I'm out. I can't do taps. Like
I don't know if
uh
anyone has dry eyes during taps. I mean, I hear it and just, I don't even know what's going on and I cry.
yeah. So you know, but the reality is like it's the ones left here, what could we have done different? I mean, what could we have done different, right? And listen, I I've never been to war. The entire the entire GWAT generation, we've never been to war. We've been to combat, but we've never been to war. And this is why we can't get too soft over here. I know you wanted to have the soft conversation, but like the real conversation we need to have is we need to tighten up our bootstraps here, right? And we need to pull our trousers up. We need to get serious because we've never been to war. Not my lifetime, right? We've been to combat. We've had some scrimmages, but we've never been to war against a well-trained, uniformed, organized enemy with an air force and a navy and a right? I mean, think about it. Think about
Yeah.
fighting in New York City. Think about fighting in Shanghai, Hong Kong, St. Petersburg, Russia, right? Moscow. Think about what's going on in like Ukraine right now. Like that's a war.
Yeah.
That's a you got do you know what I mean? Like honestly, and no offense to my enemies over there in Iraq and Afghanistan, but yeah, there were some good battles, there were some good conflicts that occurred, there were some good ticks. But here's the thing, it wasn't a war. I mean, we kicked the snot out of them 90% of the time, and casualties of war are a thing, right? Casualties of combat are a thing, but I've never been to combat. Or I've never been to war. We've been to combat, right? That's what we got to remember here. Like I want you to take the horrors that the men and women of World War II, Vietnam, Korea, they were at a war, and they came home and never talked about it.
Yeah.
They came home and they went back to farming their land. Be like those guys are my heroes. We got so many, you know, damn poor me veteran, you know, like we all signed up. Nobody told us to go, right? We all signed up. And yes, I mean, I'm 100%. Like I appreciate it. I feel like I earned it, right? I got mine. I don't have a bad experience in the last 5 years with the VA. But you know what breaks my heart is the men and women that actually went and fought a war against a formidable enemy who was vile and atrocious beyond measure. I mean, the Nazis were the worst, right? In modern history.
Hmm.
The carnage that they ensued. I mean, I watched an interview years ago of a paratrooper that was one of the first paratroopers to come on Dachau. And I will tell you right now, like, dude was hard. I mean, you could just tell. And he's describing the smell of walking up to the can. Like, you want to talk about PTSD, like, you want to talk about, like, which wasn't even a thing. Like, you were a man. Like, if you said, "Oh, I'm having a problem," like, you were shunned from society, like being the Amish and kicked out, like, you were gone, right?
Yeah.
Those men went to war. And here's the deal, like, we have to prepare our VSOs and our communities for what is coming, which is war. I mean, a war is a war. I will be surprised if in the next 12 to 18 months we don't have a world war. Right? And that's the reality. I mean,
I hope
you
you're
know
wrong.
me, I pray to God I'm wrong. Are you kidding me? I got a 6 and a 14-year-old. I don't, like, I have a 14-year-old. You got to remember, I was his age, plus or minus, when 9/11 happened. Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's nuts.
Like, so I think about it and I'm like, and I look at where we were then, because I'm a student of history. I love history. I can tell you what was going on in Europe weeks before 9/11, right? I've studied the cause and effect of it, right? Of different things that were happening geopolitically. We are in a worse place today at times 100 than we were 1 month before 9/11. So you got to think about, like, when you talk about taking care of veterans, we're very far away from the post 9/11 war timeframe, the GWAT era. Like, we're beyond that. I have this conversation with my own veterans charity all the time. Like, hey, let's focus on what we're going to do when the next tick happens, the next big conflict. Because you got to remember, we were losing 120 people a day during my deployment.
Yeah.
120 people a day. Like, in war, that's not a lot. Those are kindergarten numbers in war. That's combat, right? In war, we're talking thousands. And here's the deal: we're fighting things from the sky like we've never fought them. We've got drones. We've got,
Yeah.
like, the casualty ratio of what is coming. We need more people like you, more people like these organizations that are going to be on the front lines of taking care of those families. Because and listen, I'm not saying this. I mean, you can watch a Sean Ryan podcast. You can watch anything that, I mean, Eric Prince has been on talking about. I mean, everybody's talking about it.
Yeah.
Like, there's generals right now on Fox News talking about the amount of people coming over the border. We are invaded already. There's no need to invade us. We're already invaded. Now you just have to work out logistics, food, supplies, ammunition. We've got plenty of those things. Somebody just has to organize what's already here, if it's not already being done. And then take an aviation strike, communicate. I mean, and now we're talking about a real war, right? And one of the things that I watched an interview last night was and I saved it. I'll send it to you, but it's a former Green Beret colonel. He's talking on Fox News with Pete Hegseth about, we are going to have an October 7th style attack in the United States. And it is going to take place in our communities, in our schools, in our event spaces. And he says that, and it was like from 3 days ago. It came across on my YouTube, and I saved it. I'll send it to you because it's really interesting to me. Like, I actually want to reach out to this guy and have a conversation with him and see, hey, like, give me your thought process on, because this is what he said, and this is what really keyed my interest. He said, all the Save Our Allies groups, Tim Kennedy, everybody, Nick Palmachetto, these guys made a major effort to get people out of Afghanistan, which, we got people out of Afghanistan, right? There are folks that stayed there that were in the Afghan intelligence, Afghan special operations. They're there. They're still collecting intelligence. And what he was telling Pete Hegseth on Fox is the information they're giving us about like Hamza bin Laden's son is married to Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's daughter. Right. And they have their own, and there's over 27 cells, 27 terror groups now in Afghanistan. And he's telling me that the intelligence they're getting is they're coming here. They're coming like large scale retaliation, October. And you got to, every time we have an event, it's a learning point for the bad guy to say, hey, well, we could do that. So October 7th, I've been screaming at the top of my lungs since 2011 that we need to prepare law enforcement domestically for this, because what's going to happen? We've got an army of, mentally stressed law enforcement and veterans. I tell you right now, that's not the case. There is an army of us that are the wolf, that can flip that switch. But we need to process what we've dealt with to be able to carry on should the homeland be threatened ever again, right? And that mental health, that processing is so important, to the VSO standpoint, to the Veteran Service Organization, that is why I continue to prepare myself, is because and you know me better than most, like I don't have a belief on one side or the other. Like I'll protect anybody that isn't a terrorist or hurts children. That's my rule, right?
Yeah.
So, but what are we doing to protect ourselves from ourselves? Going back to what I said, my greatest fear is myself. Am I prepared to handle what's coming? And what is that? So I don't know. So what do? I make sure that there's nothing that's going to happen that I am not prepared to react to, both emotionally, physically, or mentally. Right? That mental health piece is so important. That outreach is so important.
And I think, coming back to what I'm moving into, one of the reasons I jumped is what you're talking about, right? If you can get someone to open up, discuss things, hand them tools on how to communicate and build their relationships at home, keep their families together, that stability provides them the chance to still do their job better, right? So if we can teach those communication skills and we can keep those people breathing, right? The people that breathe to serve all of us, if we can keep them breathing and healthy, then that's the best thing we can do for the community we're part of, right?
Trauma does not negate capability.
Right.
And I'll tell you right now, we better take care of our capable veterans, because the GWAT generation, unfortunately, the Vietnam and World War II generation is going to be a little too old to deal with anything.
Yeah.
Right. But that GWAT generation, there is enough experience there to wage a war. It's like I would say we got the elementary, the 5th grade level of warfare down. We just didn't get to that graduate level of like full scale uniform on uniform, military on military. But we've seen, the GWAT generation's seen some stuff, right? And there's some guys out there, right? And there's a lot more coming out today. And Sean Ryan and these guys are doing an amazing job at telling stories. Right? Getting the stories out there so people know. But what the American people need to know is that silent neighbor of yours whose yard's really tidy, doesn't come out much, got that Marine Corps flag, that Army flag, You don't know much about him. Keeps to himself. Like, that guy's struggling, and he's not mean. He doesn't not want to be anybody's friend. But I will tell you right now, if war ever breaks out or someone tries to take your kid off of your street, that guy will lay his life down
100%.
because that's what he signed up to. So we got to take care of that.
Yep.
We got to defend that.
You know, I do want to, I love this conversation, but I do want to say one of my favorite things, like, you always like second and third order effect conversations. One of my favorite second and third order effects of coming to work for the North Group is you pinged what I wanted to say. You know, you don't hear the stories from that guy, right? And I am going to get emotional. I had never heard.
It was coming.
I knew it was, but I never heard my dad tell a single story about his time serving until I started working for the North Group. And I learned so much, you know, language and how to speak, and to where I think he finally felt like A, I could handle hearing it, and B, could understand what he was talking about. So now I have all of these stories that my dad told me, and he opened up to me about those, and I had never heard those stories. And so it's just a beautiful cause and effect, right? Of coming into this industry that I have fallen in love with because of so many altruistic spirits and people that just want to serve and protect, like my dad. And so, yeah, I'm going to miss you guys, but I feel like
we're going to miss you too. And you will always have a home here. You will always have a place here. What I will say is the same thing I've said since we started working together. Go out, change the world, make the world a better place. Right? Don't leave the world as you found it. Figure out how to change the world. And that analogy, right, that you think you've heard me say before about saving people. You never know what that one person, you touch 10 people, you never know what that one person may go on to touch 1,000.
It's true.
So we just have to be a community of compassion. It's okay, you know, to be violent when you need to, right? Be able to flip that switch. But I will say I'm very honored to be part of a community that, honestly, we have fought to get away from status quos. We have fought to get away from selfish behavior. But you're going to do great things, and you always have a home here. And
thank you.
You know, I'm excited to see what this brings and what we can do to help it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I'm not going anywhere on social media, so please still reach out, say hi. The nonprofit I'm going to is Stronger Families, and our mission is to keep families together by helping military and first responders with communication skills. So this seemed to be just a natural step God's put in front of me. So Steve, love you, man. Thank you so much for my time with the North Group. And if any of you want to listen to the podcast episode, still on our website, tngdefense.com. You can check it out on iTunes, Podbean, or Spotify. And as always, please visit the website. Stay in touch with Steve. Send next podcast interview ideas to him. He'll love that.
We are going to continue the podcast, and we will have a plan out shortly to do that.
Awesome. All right, Steve, thank you. Okay. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day.